Sam Harris has built an entire intellectual career on one core claim, that he is telling you the truth that everyone else is too afraid to say. He positions himself as the last rational adult in a room full of ideologues, mystics, and cowards. It is a compelling performance. The problem is that when you examine the actual arguments, not the tone, not the confidence, not the credentials, what you find is a collection of logical errors so foundational that the entire edifice becomes difficult to take seriously. Today, we are going to examine exactly those arguments, tool by tool. Let us start with free will because it is the cleanest example of what Harris does structurally throughout his work. His argument goes like this: neuroscience shows that brain activity precedes your conscious awareness of an intention to act. Therefore, you did not cause the action. Therefore, free will is an illusion. He presents this as science defeating philosophy. But notice what has happened. A finding about millisecond neural firing, a micro-level measurement, has been used to make a conclusion about agency, deliberation, moral responsibility, and selfhood, all macro-level phenomena that operate across completely different timescales and organizational levels. This is called a category error. It is the equivalent of saying that because music is, at the physical level, just air pressure fluctuations, there is no such thing as a melody. The levels of analysis do not collapse into each other just because one is lower. Harris is not doing science here. He is doing philosophy badly, using scientific vocabulary as cover. Now for the moral landscape, Harris's most ambitious book and his most spectacular overreach. His thesis is that science can determine moral values because morality is about well-being, and well-being is a factual matter that neuroscience can measure. He claims this resolves the ancient Izzat problem, the philosophical puzzle of how you get from descriptive facts to moral obligations. Here is the problem. Before science can measure anything, you have to decide what you are measuring. Harris decides that well-being is the measure of morality. But that decision is not a scientific finding. It is a philosophical assumption, the very assumption that is in dispute. He has not derived morality from science. He has assumed a particular moral framework, labeled it well-being, and then announced that science can now take over. David Hume identified this problem in the 18th century. Harris does not solve it. He does not even engage it. He steps over it with the confidence of someone who has not noticed it is there. Harris's treatment of religion is perhaps his most read work, and it is almost entirely blind to how systems function. He approaches religious belief as a collection of propositions, claims about God, miracles, afterlife, evaluates those propositions against evidence, finds them false, and concludes that religion is therefore net harmful and should go. It sounds clean and logical. It is neither. Religion, whatever its truth value, is a systemic phenomenon. It is embedded in social structures that regulate norms, provide community, manage death anxiety, and coordinate behavior at scale. It has co-evolved with human societies for thousands of years. When you remove it, the other elements of that system do not remain constant. Something fills the vacuum: nationalism, ideological cults, wellness movements, conspiratorial worldviews. Harris never models this. He never asks what happens next in the system. He treats a massively interconnected variable as if it were a standalone switch you can simply toggle off. This is not rational analysis. It is the social equivalent of proposing to remove a keystone species from an ecosystem because you disapprove of its diet. The moral landscape metaphor deserves its own examination because it is not decoration, it is doing the philosophical work Harris cannot do directly. The landscape is a topographic surface. Peaks are high well-being. Valleys are suffering. Science navigates this terrain. The image makes the whole project feel obvious. Of course, you want to climb toward peaks and away from valleys. But the metaphor is structurally broken. A landscape has a metric built in: altitude. On a real landscape, everyone agrees what higher means. On Harris's moral landscape, higher means better well-being, but that requires prior agreement on what counts as well-being, whose well-being matters, and how to weigh competing forms of it. That is the entire dispute in ethics, which the landscape metaphor makes invisible by encoding one set of assumptions as if they were the terrain itself. The metaphor is not clarifying a complex idea. It is concealing a contested assumption inside a geographic image. Harris's argumentative technique relies heavily on examples, and his examples are consistently drawn from the extreme tail of distributions and then used to characterize the whole. His case against religion is built primarily from religious violence, terrorism, and dogmatic absurdity. His case against Islam specifically rests on its most extreme instantiations. He then dismisses moderate religious belief not as a counterexample but as an incoherence, a logical trick that lets him define away inconvenient data. His platform of Charles Murray's race and IQ claims followed the same template: treat a methodologically contested literature as settled, treat critics as politically motivated rather than scientifically engaged, and present yourself as the only person willing to look at the data. This is not heterodox courage. This is cherry-picking with a rationalist aesthetic. The examples are selected to support conclusions already held, and the selection process is invisible because Harris performs objectivity rather than practicing it. In Waking Up, Harris claims that meditation can allow you to directly experience the illusory nature of the self, not as a philosophical idea but as an empirical first-person discovery. He universalizes from his own contemplative experience and from a specific strand of Buddhist phenomenology, treats it as neuroscientifically validated, and presents the dissolution of self as an accessible fact rather than a contested interpretation. This is phenomenological speculation at its most undisciplined. His own meditative reports are not data. Subjective experience promoted to universal ontological conclusion is not science, it is not even careful philosophy. The claim that there is no self to be found upon introspection is one of the most contested claims in philosophy of mind, with serious thinkers on every side. Harris treats it as a matter that a sufficiently long meditation retreat can simply settle. The neuroscience of meditation does not support the weight he places on it. The contemplative traditions he draws from do not agree with each other. He has had an experience, interpreted it through a particular framework, and called it a discovery about the nature of consciousness. That is not rigor. That is spirituality with better vocabulary. Sam Harris's error is not that he asks hard questions. Hard questions deserve serious examination. His error is that he has mistaken the feeling of clarity for the achievement of it, that the confident, precise delivery of a flawed argument is no substitute for the argument actually working. Across free will, morality, religion, and consciousness, the pattern is identical: a genuine insight partially grasped, extended far beyond its logical warrant, insulated from correction by a self-image that reframes every challenge as evidence of other people's cowardice. The loneliest rationalist in the room might want to consider the possibility that the problem is the room or that the problem is him.